Hello students, Jai Guru. I am Dr. Shweta Singh, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Yogoda, Satsanga, Mahavidyalaya. In this audio lecture, we will deal with the poem The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost, Semester 3, CC 5, Unit 4. Let me tell you that in our previous audio lecture, we had an account of Robert Frost as a poet. Also, we dealt with the text. Now, in this audio lecture, we will deal with the explanation of this poem. So let's get started. The poem was published in 1916 as the first poem in collection Mountain Interval. In the poem, road symbolizes our life. The poem is about choices and the choices that shapes us. Two roads here represents two or more choices in our lives. Also, the poet says that the path that we don't choose in our life is the road not taken. He describes his feeling about the choice that he had left in the past. The path which we choose or which we have chosen decides our future, decides our destination. The important message that the poet wants to give is that the choice that we make has an impact on our future, and if we make a wrong choice, we regret it but cannot go back on it. So, we must be wise while making choices. The road not taken begins with a dilemma. As many fairy tales do. Out walking, the speaker comes to a fork in the road and has to decide which path to follow. And here goes the first 5 lines of the poem. I quote, "Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the underground." Unquote. In his description of the trees, Frost uses one detail, the yellow leaves, and makes it emblematic of the entire forest. Defining the wood with one feature prefigure one of the essential idea of the poem, the instance that a single decision can transform a life. The yellow leaves here suggests that the poem is set in autumn. The yellow leaves also evoke a sense of transience. That is, one season will soon give away to another. The speaker here briefly imagines starving of choice, wishing he could travel both and be one traveler. The syntax in the first stanza also mirrors this desire. And also we can see that the second, third and fourth line begins with and. Here the repetition of and by the poet is an example of anaphora. Later in the poem, the speaker calls the road he chose less traveled, and it does intentionally strike him as a slightly gracier, slightly less traffic. Frost then again repeatedly says that the two roads are comparable, are observing this time that the roads are equally untraveled, carpet in newly fallen yellow leaves. Here I quote, "And both that morning equally lay in leaves, no step had trodden back." Yes, stanza 3, lines 11 and 12. Here I also want to quote a suggestion of William Pritchard about the poem. I quote, "Choosing one rather than the other was a matter of impulse. Impossible to speak about any more clearly than to say that the road taken had perhaps the better claim." So this was the suggestion of William Pritchard about the poem. Talking more about the poem, in many ways the poem becomes about how. The poem turns something as irrational as an impulse into a intentional decision. As we know that decisions are nobler than whims, and this reframing is comfortable too for the way it suggests that a life unfolds through cautious design. However, as the poem reveals that design arises out of constructed narratives, not dramatic actions. Again, I quote line number 13, stanza 3. Oh, I keep the first for another day. This line initiates a change. As the speaker shifts from depiction to contemplation, the language becomes more dramatic and old-fashioned. Also, the neatness of how the sentence structure suddenly converges with the line structured echoes the sudden clear division that choice creates. The tone in this line, oh, I keep the first for another day, becomes increasingly dramatic and also turns playful, as whichever road he chooses, the speaker enjoy a walk filled with pleasant foliage. Now, moving on further towards the fourth stanza, and I quote, I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. So towards these concluding stanza, the poem also turns increasingly air and difficult to grasp, as the poet does throughout the poem. Frost wrote this poem at a time when many men doubted they would ever go back to what they had left. Frost's lines have often been read as a celebration of individualism. Now, yes, Frost also refuses to allow the title to have a single meaning. The road not taken also evokes the road less travelled, the road most people did not take. So the poem moves from a fantasy of starving of choice to a statement of division. The readers, however, cannot discern whether the difference evoked in the last line is glorious or disappointing or neither. What is clear is the act of choosing creates division. Also that the choice is always inevitable. We can only be a linguistic traveler traveling two roads at once, experiencing two meanings. Thank you.